Hello, everybody. So good to see you all. Hi. Let's see, many familiar faces, some new. Don't worry, we'll get to know each other, even if you're new. If I don't know you. Good. Wow. Everybody looks so nice and so beautiful. What are you doing? Is there something that the AI is doing now here? So, we are now starting the new adventure. I hope you're all ready for that. It's a ride. It's going to be a ride. Don't worry. And it's going to be a different ride because it's going to bring together something that we already discussed, but some that we haven't. So before we start, I just want, for those who are not who are new here, I just want to give you some briefing. If you know that we have this YouTube channel. What is the name of that? Lupandorit, Lela? Is this the name? Okay, so we have the channel of Lupandorit. So you can go there, and most of the courses that we did in the past are there. Because I'm not going to go over the origins of Tantra and all kind of Tantra. I don't want to go again into it. Okay, we already did it twice in a different ways, and this is something that you can follow there, because the aim of this course is something different. Okay, and I hope you're going to benefit from that, because this is something that is more it's quite rare, because I know that because this is what I'm doing for the last 20 years, and I'm following all my teachers around the world, and this is not something that we usually talk about when we talk about Tantra, the psychology of Tantra. Okay, so I hope you're going to benefit from that. And I think that's a good opportunity, because most of you, I guess, I'm not sure, but most of you are Loma Lina's students, right? So this is a great opportunity for us to, to feel the gratitude that we have such a life Buddha in our life that can bring us all these amazing experiences and teachings together. So we're going to start with the lineage prayer. And if you're part of Loma Lina's Sangha, so you know that when Loma Lina is doing the lineage prayer, usually what she does is that she combines the lineage prayer, the bodhicitta, the refuge, and the Guru Yoga together. I'm not going to go over what is the lineage prayer because it's in Tibetan. If you don't know that, you can go to her website. Lela will put the website here on the chat, so you can go there and have all the beautiful teachings that she's giving us again and again and again. So if you're familiar with this prayer, so join me. If not, just listen. Try to fill your heart with the gratitude towards your teacher, if it's Loma Lina or somebody else. And just, let's try to connect together. Okay? Chöku'i kunduzongo balombai, doje sembagerav doje dang, chere singi badu singlabde, dedang la chuchata susumchi, zokchen chupelamalam soa, ogen pema junela soa, Doje chang che chilo raro dang, pamila gumpo tsatsapa, na pupadang, palden drupa so, yula manam la so, geluk namanam la so, Lamalina namanamla so Kalkan dujang dari mepa Nunggarap doju shing trakpa Chitedang nisume pai Palamanam cheten Okay. So we really want to start to understand why we are talking about the psychology of Tantra. This is not something which is obvious, right? Even to combine the two words together, psychology and Tantra, because most of us as a Tantrika is somebody who is practicing Tantra, and I guess most of you are Tantrikas here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be interested in the psychology of Tantra. So this is not so obvious to combine those two words together and to try to dive into a deeper understanding of the connection of them. Usually, what we know about Tantra is that when you are a practitioner of Tantra, so you go over a specific process, which is usually a preparation before you go into the Tantra. Then you have the initiation, or sometimes called empowerment, to the Tantric practice that you might practice in the future, or you want to practice in the future. And then you receive from the teacher the explanation, what we call the lung. Okay, the lung is they give you the process, or they give you the sadhana, or they give you the script for that. And then you have the teachings, which is much more elaborated, which is tree. We call it in Tibetan tree. And then it's up to you. Either you put it on the shelf, and many of us did it in the past, and many of us might still doing that, or you start practicing. Now, when you start practicing the Tantra, you don't know what's going to happen. Nobody is explaining you that the transformation that will take place works this way or another. Okay? You receive the script, which is in our language called the sadhana, and you start doing the rituals and the sadhana step by step. In many cases, if you're lucky and you have a good teacher, so what happens is that sometimes the parts of the sadhana is being unfolded. It's open up, and the teacher gives you a much more elaborated teaching on what is really there behind those words, because the words are like, it's coded, okay? And then we practice, and we cannot practice without the faith, because if we don't have a faith, so we will not be able to do something that we don't understand what's happening, why we do that. And unfortunately, in Lela here became, she became a cat now in my face. So, so faith is a crucial part of our, let's say, beginning of practicing Tantra. Because usually after a while, when you practice Tantra, you do know what is happening. You don't know exactly how it works, how this saying those words or doing those ritual affects you. But you do feel the transformation, some of the transformation that is taking place. And what we're going to do in this, actually, it's quite a short course. I think it's going to be five classes, but you know me, if you already studied with me, you know that I start somewhere and I don't know exactly it's going to end. So what we're going to try to understand is how it works on our psychic, okay? that's actually the way that it's a more, this is going to be the focus. Now, before we're going to do that, I want to give you some information about why we're going to do that, okay? We all know that the Buddhist psychology, actually, it's a very ancient system. And the system has been created by those enlightened beings in order for us to understand how the mind and how our experiences are created and formed. And this is the foundation of the Buddhist practice. And when we look at it, Tantra is actually very much the highway to those practices, because those practices has been designed to transform what we know as the body, speech, and mind. And this is a term that is always, always embedded in the tantric, in the Buddhist tantric: body, speech, and mind. Sometimes we call it in a different way because we want to transform the body, speech, and mind into the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And if I can sum all of that in one sentence, is that we are practicing in order to transform the body, speech, and mind, the ordinary body, speech, and mind, into the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. For the sake of this discussion, we're going to separate them. But as you know, we're separating that only for better understanding, not because they are separated. Because it's like to say that, my hand and my head is separated from my body. It's not, okay? But if I want to talk about this hand, I will define it for this discussion as talking about this hand. But the body of this figure who calls Doric now, this is the name that has been tagged on this bunch of cells and other substances, is a whole. But when I want to discuss something, I will go and look at it from a different angle, okay? I will talk about the hand, and I will talk about the head, and I will talk about the body, but it's all one. And when we talk about transforming the body and speech and mind into the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya, we also want to understand how it works. Not only, when I started practicing Tantra, and I was told that everyone has the Dharmakaya within him. I didn't understand what they're talking about. It took me years to understand that. So this course is essential for those tantric practitioners who want to deepen their practice by integrating the rich and transformative understanding of this process, okay? So the goal of this course is to introduce us to the deeper understanding of the Buddhist psychology, because the only understanding of the Buddhist psychology will allow us to let go and release from the conceptual mind. I know this is some kind of it's contradict each other, because I'm talking about deeper understanding going through the mind, right through the conceptual mind, and I'm talking about after understanding that we will be able to release the conceptual mind, because we don't want to stay in the conceptual mind. So unlike the Western psychology, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Western psychology. The Western psychology very often focus on treating specific mental health disorders. There is a reason why it's called disorder, because there is I would say, normal behavior, right? Normal health or normal mental health. And when we are moving away on scale from this normal, it's become, or disorder, it's become disorder. This is the Western psychology. But Buddhist psychology, the aim of Buddhist psychology is totally different, is to address the root causes of the human suffering and to try to cultivate some well-being or to eliminate the suffering. We don't specify, we do not define in Buddhist psychology something as disorder. Like, for example, if somebody has, I don't know, paranoid thinking, that will be a Western psychology terminology. Okay, it's not going to be in the Buddhist psychology. So don't worry if you think that we might discuss that. There are different programs that are aimed to those who are the psychotherapists who are treating people with mental health disorders, how to work with the Buddhist psychology. But that's not going to work with Tantra, because most of the people who have disorders, mental health disorders, cannot practice Tantra for various reasons, because we are going to use something which is so strong, and usually people with mental health disorders that has been diagnosed with that cannot practice deep Tantra, okay? The Yoga Tantra or Anuttara Yoga Tantra. They can always practice the first two levels of Tantra, okay? Kriya Tantra and Charya Tantra, but not Yoga Tantra and Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Maybe I'll give you the reason for that, because if you have been diagnosed with one of those disorders, you want to know that, okay? In Tantra, we work a lot with trying to imagine a lot of things around us. We're trying to see the world in a different way. In the Western psychology, it might look like it's hallucinations, okay? And it might create some kind of not understanding or not reading, I would say, the ordinary reality, okay, if there is something like that. Because in Tantra, we don't see the world as an ordinary reality. On the other, I mean, even we elaborate the fact that the world is a mandala and it's not an ordinary reality. So it might create some kind of confusion if somebody has a mental health disorder. So this is just, some kind of a cautious to those who have been diagnosed with mental health disorders, okay, in Western psychology. But we do use the word psychology trying to understand Tantra, because what is the psychology? Psychology is actually trying to understand the psyche. And psyche, in other words, is the mind, okay? So that's why we call it the Tantra, the psychology of Tantra. So maybe I want to talk a little bit about the journey that brought me to understand my journey that brought me to understand the psychology of Tantra and why I was drawn to that. And well, I think that the first credit to one of my first teachers for the tantric psychology is to Lama Rob Priest. I don't know if you know him. Lama Rob Priest, it's Priest, Preece. Okay, that's how he spells his name. He's been one of my first teachers to the psychology of Tantra. And I was very fortunate not only to be his student to this subject, but also to work with him as my psychotherapy. Okay, so I was very fortunate with that to have both ways. Okay, also the psychotherapy on one hand, the Western psychotherapy, but embedded in the psychology of Tantra. So before we will go into more details, I just want to show you the book that he wrote. He wrote the book, The Psychology of Buddhist Tantra. Let's see if you can see that. Okay. This is the book. We can write it also in the, you can order that. I think it's from Snow Lion, so you can order that online. Okay, this is the book. And but he was not my only teacher for that. I have studied with a lot of other teachers. And during the course, I will give you more references to other books and other teachers if you want, okay? But most of my teachings and most of my studying and the process that I was going through with that is through Rob Priest, and I want to give him the credit for that and to thank him because it really opened my eyes to something that I never thought that might happen, okay? So you might want to dive into this book by yourself. So I want to talk a little bit about my journey because I think that most of us, I saw that with my peers, with my friends, and with other students that I was eventually starting to teach Tantra and to teach not only Tantra, but also other practices, Buddhist practices. They're going through the same process. When we received the Tantra, again, as I said before, we received some kind of a script, and we are supposedly starting to read the script, maybe in Tibetan. Most of the Tibetan teachers are also Lama Lina, which is also actually a Tibetan teacher. So they recommend us to try to do it in Tibetan. Fortunately, most of us has received some kind of sadhana in English. And I felt that for me, it was not enough. I had to translate it into my own language. So I worked a lot in order to translate the practices, the different practices into my own language, because I felt that it doesn't move in. It doesn't get in. I can't tell you why it didn't get in until I understood the process from a different angle, because it's very nice, conceptually. We were doing a lot of ceremonies. We were doing a lot of sadhanas. I was practicing that very diligently. I was doing that daily. And when I went into those deep retreats, I did it 4 sessions a day. I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 hours a day of practicing that each time, for 30 days or for 60 days, again and again and again and again. And something happened, but it still stayed in the conceptual level. And then something very interesting happened to me and to my friends and to my students and colleagues and all people I know. We were starting to think, because we didn't understand what's going on, we were starting to think that, collecting initiations and different practices and collecting empowerments here and there. And maybe or maybe if I'll just receive this one, and maybe if I'll just get this one, I will better understand, or the transformation will take place, because we don't see how it works. And the more I received, initiations and empowerments, I felt much more enriched in spiritualism. But it's not true, because it stayed in the conceptual mind. So if it stays in the conceptual mind, that's missed the whole point of Tantra. Because as you remember, we're trying to transform our body, speech, and mind. So if we are using the same skills that we were using as first grade students, studying and words and stuff like that, so we're staying in the same level. We're not transforming anything. So I think only after, I don't know, maybe a year or maybe more than that, when I start practicing, a year of being in a very long silence, isolated retreats, okay? Because, I was trying to follow my teacher's advice. If you really want to do transformative work, dive into deep retreats, because only in retreat you will be able to do the transformative work. So I was doing a retreat and another one and another one, and I really was a very good student, okay? I did everything by the book. And I dived into this, but it still stayed in the conceptual level. I think only about, I don't know, maybe a year or a year and a half, so accumulating, it's not timeline, it's more of accumulating 12 or maybe 18 or 16, I don't remember, retreats, months of retreats, deep retreats. I started to feel something, and then I realized that something is missing. And there is a reason why it's missing. Because I started to feel something in my body. You all remember when Lamalina is teaching us, she said, okay, when you go into the sadhana and you do that and that, people are asking her, okay, when are we going to do the Mahamudra or the Dzogchen, the Trekchö? And she said, here and here in the sadhana, you're going to do that and that. What actually she is advising us? She's advising us to leave all the words aside and to let go and stay either in the Laktong of Mahamudra or the Trekchö at the beginning. Okay, then you can go further, but at the beginning, okay? So what is happening there? Are there any words there? Are there any rituals there? Are you doing something? There is none, it's non-doing, right? So what is happening there in this point when you can stay longer and longer in this period of time, which is in between one yoga, we call that yoga, to another, not yoga of the body, yoga of the mind, right? That's what we do in the sadhana. And then you start to feel something in the body. When you start to feel something in the body, you are, I will say, what's the word for that? Sliding into the Sambhogakaya. Because the Sambhogakaya is a place with no words, non-imagination, non-mental activity, non-conceptual or mental activity. So you slide into an area that you're not usually used to be there. So you're sliding into the part of the Sambhogakaya. And we're not used to be in the Sambhogakaya. We don't really understand what is the Sambhogakaya, by the way. I remember it took me years to try to understand what is the Sambhogakaya. Okay, so what is the Sambhogakaya? In some of the sadhanas, there is a description, and some of you who are practicing Vajrayogini, there is a description, right? This is the Sambhogakaya practice. But then you do that, and the Vam go here and there and that and that. What is the Sambhogakaya? You cannot describe Sambhogakaya in words. There are no words to describe it because it's a sensation, it's a feeling. It's something that's embodied in the body. That's why when we say we are transforming the body, speech, and mind, this is something that is happening in the body. So what's happening in the body? That's why when you are practicing the Anuttara Yoga Tantra or Yoga Tantra, but mostly the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, when you are going through from generation stage, and again, I'm not going to explain again what is generation stage and completion stage. If you don't know, go back to the first classes that we did. You have all the explanation there. But if you are familiar with the generation stage, where we are trying to generate ourselves, that's why it's called the generate stage. We're trying to generate ourselves as the deity, which is basically to stop generating ourselves as ourselves, right? We're trying to take a different identity. And then when we are practicing the sadhana again and again and again and again, it's happening. At the beginning, it takes us maybe an hour to do that, and it involves a lot of words and imagination. And then in the sadhana, it says, instantly, I became, I don't know, Vajrayogini, Vajrakilaya, Yamantaka, whatever the name of the deity that you are. Instantly. What does it mean instantly? Immediately. So it doesn't need a process anymore. You already generate yourself. There is something because you already practice that like for so many sessions, so many years. It's like when I wake up in the morning, I generate myself as Dorit, right? How do I do that? Why do I wake up in the morning and Dorit is going to wash her teeth? Why this is me? Who is me? I practice that again and again for so many years. So this is obvious. I generate myself in the morning as Dorit, right? So the same things happens when you try to change and you generate yourself as the deity. But in order to do that, you have to do it again and again and again. And then you have the generation stage. And you already changed the identity for the time being that you're practicing, maybe for more if you're a more advanced practitioner. And then, okay, are we staying in the generation stage? No, we're going to completion stage. Those of you who are familiar with the completion stages practices, you know that it hardly involves words. It's basically physical at the beginning. Okay, Tuma especially. It's physical. Those are physical exercises in order to try to create some kind of experience, sensations, feelings in the body. In the tumor, we're trying to create heat at the beginning. Then later on, we're trying to create something else. But at the beginning, we're trying to create the heat. Okay? Where the heat takes place? In the mind? Not in the body. So those completion stages practices are already created in order to slide us into the Sambhogakaya. And then something very interesting happening. If you're able to practice those completion stages practices and to devote yourself to those practices, because it really needs a devotion. It really needs investing a lot of time in that, okay? So what happened? It's at a certain point, you can let go, release, relax. Do you know those words from the bracelets? Lama Linas gave us those blue bracelets. So you can go, let go and relax and let be, and then enter what we slide into the Dharmakaya. We wouldn't be able to slide into Dharmakaya if Dharmakaya was not there in the first place. But it's so obscured. we're not in touch with that. We're not in touch with the Dharmakaya because so many things are happening. First of all, the Nirmanakaya part, which is the body and the conceptual mind working, and we're already there. And then if we are lucky and we can slide into the Sambhogakaya, into the relationship with the body, and be able to stay in the body and to embed those experiences, not analyzing them conceptually, but being there as a being, okay, not as a doing, but as a being, then we can open up to the Dharmakaya. Oops, all of a sudden the body, speech, and mind has been transformed into the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. Well, actually, the way I just explained it, it's the other way around. It's the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya. Okay? But in the scripture, we say we want to transform the body, speech, and mind, and then we start with the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and then Dharmakaya. So if you look at it now, understanding why it's happening, so, okay, this is the process of how Tantra works for us. I think that the main reason why my friends and colleagues and, many people are not able to do this transformation is not because of the lack of knowledge or lack of practices, because the Buddha gave us 84,000 practices, as you know. Each one of the yogas, the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and others, we have so many rituals, we have so many practices, we have only in Tumo, only me, which I'm not that familiar with all the Tumos around the world, I received, I think, I don't know, 9 or 10 different kinds of Tumo practices, only for the first stage of the completion stage practices. I'm not talking about the levels within each one of those. I'm talking about different practices, okay? How you go to the same place eventually, but totally different practices. So there is no lack of practices. So why can't we do that? What is happening? And the reason we can't do that is very interesting. And that comes the psychology of Tantra. It's because most of us have some kind of trauma embedded in our body. So working with the body in those practices creates some kind of either a fear, we don't want to go there, it's like, non-consciously, or when we are there, a lot is happening. And you may recall that, for example, Amalina sometimes say to specific Rushans or specific practices, she said, I have to do it in person. I cannot do it online because I have to be there to make sure that if something comes up, I'll be there to be able to take you out. Remember that? Many of you have done, like, for example, the body Rushan or the outer body Rushan, or the working with emotion, or working with perceptions. Okay, so she feels that she needs to be there. And what comes up? That she needs to be there in order to protect us. She or other teachers as well. What comes up? Those, just for the sake of this discussion, I will call these traumas, okay? Those traumas that are embedded in the body. They can be embedded in the body on the physics level, for example, I'll give you an example. People can, all of a sudden, something has been released within them that when we work about the body, when we work with the body, working with the body is actually working with the energy body, okay? We're not working, I know that some of us, we have the Nijang, and we have the Yantra yoga, and we have the external yoga that we do, but this is a preparation to work with the energy body, right? When we are sitting and doing the completion stages practices, we're doing energy body practices. We're not, working with the breathing and working with holding the breath or with some kind of imagination with the channel body. It's working with the energy body. It's not working, physically. The physics is only at the beginning. Then you don't need that, okay? Why do you do the beginning? In the beginning, why are we doing the physical? Because we are trying to connect ourselves to the body, okay? So let's say that I'm working with the energy body. And if well, before that, in the Western psychology, when we talk about the mind, or sometimes it's called the soul, which I don't like the words, okay? Or the psyche. So we know that there are actually 3 levels. It's the conscious level, like I'm aware that now here in my country is night, maybe in your country it's morning, I don't know. But I know that now it's night. So this is conscious, right? I know that if I'm crying or if I'm sad or if I'm, I don't know, I'm afraid. So this is very on the conscious level. Then we have the thread. The thread is some kind of a border in between the conscious and the unconscious, okay? In different psychologies, Jungian psychology, Freudian psychology, it's called different, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to give you the diagram for that, okay? So we have the level of the consciousness. We have the border, the line that define the protect us from, from that to come up and down, because in the underline, in the unconsciousness, what we have, it's embedded there, all those feelings, experiences, perceptions that we have, that are unconsciousness to us. So what happens when something from the unconsciousness comes up? As a metaphor, only a metaphor, I always give this as an example in my clinic to the people that I work with, is that just imagine to yourself that you have a computer and you have a virus on your computer. You don't know that. This virus is working again and again. The only way to get rid of, and he's doing whatever he wants there, he or she, I don't know what is the virus, okay, if it's he or she, I don't know. But that is doing harm to whatever is happening, right? But you're not aware of that. You don't have a consciousness for that. So when you have the antivirus put on that computer, what happens? It's that all of a sudden, somebody helps you to diagnose that you had a virus. And then he helps you to remove that. But all those times, and all the time that this virus or those viruses were working there, you didn't see that. You didn't know that. Those traumas, experiences, and we are also sometimes we call that karmic winds, are working there as the virus. We don't know them. We don't identify them. So we need somebody external to help us, with a qualified somebody, of course, not just anybody who will point that, to see that and to help us to identify those viruses like the antivirus, and then to help us to get rid of that. Because identify those viruses is not enough. Let's say that I have a trauma of, I don't know, fear of heights, okay? Which I do have, okay? Let's say that I have a trauma of fear of heights. I don't know when it happened, why it happened. It doesn't matter. Whenever I have these feelings of the fear of heights that comes up, I can live my life as much as I want and I'm happy and everything is okay. All of a sudden, something comes up. And the fear of death is happening there because of the heights. For me, it's from the heights, but somebody else, it can be from something else. So what happens is that it affects my daily life. I start to suffer. I start to become very emotional, and I can react in a very harmful manner to myself or to others because the fear is so strong. But where was it? I mean, yesterday it wasn't here. Where was that fear? Those of you who were doing the working with emotion with Lamalina knows, okay, the retreat of working with emotions. And if you haven't, so I really recommend you to do that. Sign up for that in her website. So you know that when you started to sit and start to work with those emotions, all of a sudden something happened. Now, what happens if a really big trauma comes up? I've seen people that came out from retreat and they were not ready for their retreat. And they didn't even understand that trauma came up. And they came out totally whacked out. And it took them a lot of time to come back to their senses. We don't want that to happen. So we need somebody to take care of that, okay? That's the I would say, the role of the teacher, if he knows or she knows how to deal with that. So going back to the understanding, I'll give you another example, okay? Most of us have some kind, not, I mean, it's a different level of a different degree of dissociation. What does it mean, dissociation? Dissociation is a psychology term, okay? It's not a Buddhist term. Dissociation is that we are departing from the connecting to the body. In the Western psychology, we usually give that when we teach or we study the trying to understand the dissociation, we take a very, I would say, extreme example. And I'll give you this example because I want you to understand, and although it's very extreme, okay? I'm not going to go into the war because war zone and people are in battle always have some kind of a dissociation, and this is needed there. They need to departure from their body in order to function in the battle. Otherwise, they will have naturally the fear of death, right? So they have to have the dissociation. But let's go to something else. Let's say that somebody is having a man or a woman have been raped. Being raped is very strong, embedded in the body, right? Because it's happened in the body. It's not happening somewhere else. It's happening in the body. So what happened is that if somebody wants to function after a rape, they need some kind of mechanism, internal mechanism, psychology, internal mechanism to protect themselves in order to live their life. So they are starting to dissociate from the body. The body is not me. Because if the body is me, So what happens? It's that every time I have a connection with the body, the post-trauma of the raping will come back. And we cannot tolerate that as people, right? So the dissociation is a defensive mechanism, which is very important. But since even if we have not been raped, and even if we have not been in the battle and we were not in a war zone and we were not in this, or maybe we had a car accident, again, embedded in the body. Or maybe I just walked through the street and walking through the street and something, I don't know, a tree fell and even it didn't touch me, but I was so scared of that. Or I saw a snake, or I was bitten by a snake, or I had a very strong allergy reaction. Something is now in my body embedded as an unconsciousness mechanism of dissociation. Now, what I'm asking you to do, I'm trying to ask you to do association, not dissociation, association with the body. So obviously, when I'm asking that, I mean, in those, in the completion stages practices, okay? So obviously, when I'm asking somebody to associate with their body, because the transformation is taking place in the body, in the Sambhogakaya. So when I'm asking somebody to do something and that brings them back to the body, I need to be aware that trauma might come up. Do you understand me? This is very important to understand. I don't know how many of you did a Vipassana retreat, Vipassana retreat or Vipassana, sometimes it's called Vipassana, sometimes it's called Vipassana. When you have Vipassana retreats, so what happens is that you have to sit for each time, it's different amount of time, no moving. And then what happens? A lot of things comes up from the body, right? And if the person, if the thread, the border, the gate from the unconsciousness to the consciousness comes up, whoops, we have what we call in the psychology, we have post-trauma experience. And then what you see in those Vipassana or Vipassana retreats, for 10 days you sit there, you're not talking, you're not allowed to speak with anyone unless you have a very, and then you, all of a sudden, you have those traumas that comes up. And how do you deal with that? And people are really getting freaked out. I guess you already met some of your colleagues or friends or somebody that had those kind of retreat, and they came out, and what happens is that usually they don't want to get involved in practices anymore. Now, if you are going to swim in icy water, you will know that you're going to get very cold, right? So I want to give you the information. If you are going to dive into those practices in Tantra that will bring you, that you will be embodied in your body, and this will happen, you might feel cold. You might feel some kind of trauma coming up. And we will learn how to deal with that, okay? We will learn how to deal with that. Because if you will stay in the dissociation, the transformation will not take place. Okay? And what's the reason why we practice Tantra? We're practicing Tantra because we want the transformation to take place, right? That's why we practice Tantra. Otherwise, don't practice. Just, have fun. And again, it's some kind of, I don't know the right word for that, but I'm using the word sliding into something which is actually always there. I mean, you cannot get into something which is always there, right? It's not something that you do. It's all of a sudden you experience something that was always there, but you have not been able to notice that. Okay? And now you're noticing that. And we need to learn how to cope with that. Okay? So we'll stop here for today. This was the introduction for the Psychology of Tantra. I hope that I didn't that you didn't get too fear out of the reason why I'm doing that, because I really want to help people. Because if you want to dive into a transformative practices that Tantra provides you, the Tantra gives you, I mean, it's there. But please, please, don't be afraid. First of all, I'm here. And I told Lela just the other day that after this course, what I want to do is to dive into those, let's say, disturbing emotions. Maybe we'll do it in a more, less than, not as a teaching like a course. We will do it more of a Q&As, and people can share, and I can support you with that. Okay, don't be afraid. It will happen. I promise you. You will have experience, traumatic experience that will come up. If you'll dive into the tantric, the hardcore tantric practices, I'm not talking about Kriya Tantra, and I'm not talking about just practicing the sadhana. Practicing the sadhana is great. You need that. You need it for the generation stage, but it stays in the level of the conceptual mind. You're not sliding into the Sambhogakaya, and the Sambhogakaya is embedded in the energy body. Do you understand? And so how would you be able to slide into the Dharmakaya? Well, again, unless you're a Chikchawa, as Lamalina says, and you have already been there in the Dharmakaya because you've been introduced to Dzogchen, and oh, you got it at the first minute. Okay, and don't waste your time here in this class, okay? So we still have few more minutes. So if you have some questions, so please. Yes, Carl. Hi, nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for taking the question. I'm just curious maybe how literal you mean by sliding. And the reason I ask that is because very early on in my meditative experience, it was an initial barrier where when really resting in more of a meditative state, I would actually feel as though I was like being sucked out of my body. It was just a very strange experience, and it was extremely scary. So it wasn't a pleasant experience. It was as though I was leaving. I don't know what was happening, of course, but my brain was trying to understand it and was set on that if I continued to do that, I was going somewhere else. And if I didn't know if I would come back, and I wasn't ready to leave. And it was very scary because I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to let go of this world, this body, or whatever. And so, um,
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering if when you say sliding, that's just what it reminded me of. And it made me wonder, is that what you're pointing to? Or are you pointing to something, is that just a nyam? And are you pointing to something that's way more subtle than like what physically or mentally could be experienced? Like, does that question make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you for bringing that up, because although, I don't know, there are many people here in this, you got disappeared. Can you put your hand again, please, Carl? Because for some reason I don't see, oh, here. Yeah, the Zoom has this thing that the hand already disappears. So many people have this experience that you just said, because, and that's exactly explained. This is the best example I can give you for what I'm talking about dissociation. Because what happened? You had a feeling that you are living the body, right? So if you live the body, so of course it creates a lot of fear, because when we are living the body, when the mind is living the body, because we have experienced that for so many lives, the mind is living the body on death, right? And the death is a fear that's embedded within each one of us. And it's a survival mechanism, which is good, right? We want that to happen. We don't want, to be brave, stupid brave, and, carelessly go around the world without knowing what is going to happen to us. But what happened to you? Because you were not prepared to understand that this is a normal experience, normal, not disorder, normal experience when you start to embody with the body. I know it sounds funny. You start to embody it with the body. And your experience was the dissociation. Now, dissociation is a yam. You experience dissociation. But what was your reaction to that? Your reaction was fear. And when you had this fear, I don't know, how many times have you experienced that?
So, two things to say. How many times I've experienced that sensation? I'd say maybe 3 to 4 times, and I really haven't experienced it for years since then. For some reason, I haven't gotten to that point. But one thing I just want to clarify sooner than later is the word you're saying of disassociation, because I can, I've felt disassociation before. Um, as I'm walking and as I'm moving through life, I feel as though it's just a movie. It's hard to explain, but it just feels unreal. It feels like I'm not solid and feeling as though what I'm seeing is real versus a dream. I can't distinguish, am I really awake? Am I really alive? Or is this just a dream? And when I hear you say disassociation,
This
that's
is
what I
not
think.
this is not dissociation, what you just
Okay.
described.
Okay.
From the Western psychology, okay?
I see. I see.
Okay.
Thank you for
So
clarifying
what
that.
you were describing as the something leaving the body, okay?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you called it a mind or not. This is dissociation.
Okay.
Okay, and you're looking at yourself from a distance. It's a separation, okay? This is not me. The body is not me. I'm just living it, okay? Now, this is a feeling. It's not necessarily something that's conceptually, right? So thank you for bringing it up, because I think many people feels that, but they don't know how to describe it, and you did it very well, okay? So you said that you had experienced that for about 3 times and then you stopped. So all those 3 times you had fear?
Yeah. All those 3 times it was terrifying.
How do you think it's affected your continuation of the practices?
Um, there's a sense of timidness. There's a sense of I'm scared to even put my leg up on the brick that's slightly higher because maybe that gets me to this point where I get sucked out of my body again. There's a lot more timidness and there's a lot less bravery or courage. Um, but in addition to that, there have been other times where I've experienced adjacent perceptions that aren't as strong or aren't as convincing that I'm going to be sucked out of my body like a vacuum, where I've sat with it. Like I'll just get an intense spell of dizziness or an intense spell of just disorientation, um, and I just sit with it. I bunker down and I'm like, there's nothing to fear. So in a sense, I'd say it's both created timidness and a lack of courage, but it's also created like a sense of discipline where I really want to get over this and I
Yeah,
really want to.
yeah.
It's
So the
kind of like
sense that I really want to get over that, it's really something that it's do you remember the 3 layers that I described? The conscious layer, the border, and the unconsciousness, right?
yeah.
So those explanations that the minds give to what you just described here is thicken the layer of the border. And in Tantra, we want to do the other way around. We want to thin, to create, to actually to eliminate this border for those karmic winds, for those traumas, for those fears to come up. And then there are different practices how we face them. Because as long as they're in the unconsciousness, they will continue to work like viruses. That's why I gave you the example of the virus in the computer. They're there. How do I know if that they're still there? Because you are afraid. You have some kind of cautiousness in order not to experience this again. Okay? And most of the time when we have some kind of trauma, we don't need to analyze the reason for the trauma because we don't know what happened in your previous life. When Lama Lina is doing, for example, the regression retreat, okay? So many people are feeling a lot of traumas that happened in their previous life because we are going regression. We are going what happened in my previous life and the previous life, and then again and again and again. And we are experiencing a lot of traumas there because, first of all, the trauma of death, right? Because we died each time. So then we're really eliminating this threshold from the consciousness to the unconsciousness. So for me, that means that there's something holding you from releasing something because we want to get rid of the karmic winds eventually. Okay, that's one of the goals of Tantra. We want to get rid of the karmic winds. So, for example, that's the reason why in the 3 retreat, for example, in some lineages, okay, well, actually it's all in all lineages, we have a Drupon. Drupon is a retreat master that really can read minds, and he doesn't have to be there physically, but he hover around the retreat and the retreatants, and he can see what is happening, and he can help. He doesn't have to talk to you, but you will get help, okay? So sometime Lupon, sometime Drupon, those are retreat master and tantric master that can help, okay? That's why when you want to go into deep retreat, not only the 3 retreat, maybe that, you want a teacher available because of those, because we don't want you to sit there and do the ritual without getting the effect of the transformation. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And I've seen so many of my friends doing that. And actually, for myself, I did it for so many months of retreats. Okay, so that was very good that you recognize that. It's somewhere. It's in your unconsciousness. And eventually, if you want to go into a deeper retreat, we can work together if you want to. Okay, we can work on that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. What is it, Margarita? Okay, hi, Margarita.
Marguerite, yes. So earlier at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned that it was really important to you to translate the sadhanas into your native language. And the sadhanas that I do come to me with English, which is my language. But I have, of course, also been encouraged to do things in Tibetan for many years, and I did. And lately, it's just been bigger and bigger for me. This thing of like, well, how much of this is my culture and how potent are these images when they're not from my culture? And, you know, and so it relates to what you were talking about with language. And so I've been going a little more into just doing my sadhanas in English, but also kind of questioning, all right, well, what about these knives? What about these drums? What about these things that I think come out of cultures that where they had more, they were images that had more potency for people who were using them, integrated with them in their lives. more than I am. And so sometimes I'm like, well, is this getting me archetypally as deeply as it could when I'm just not using these? I don't have the charge. Maybe that's it. Some of the imagery that comes through doesn't have the same charge for me as it might have had for those who created these sadhanas. So
yeah, I want to answer that in two levels, okay? Let me answer that in two levels. For me, working with translating the sadhanas, for example, or the teachings into my own language was something that created some kind of familiarity with the practice, okay? Because although I know Tibetan, and I don't know fluent Tibetan, but I know many words in Tibetan, and I know how to read Tibetan, it's not my language. So even though I'm doing the sadhana in Tibetan, I don't get, again, there are two levels here. First, the understanding, the conceptual part, that I want to understand what is going on there, not just saying words that I don't understand. But that's my intention, or my, I don't know if it's a more of not curiosity. I think it's more of my tendency in order to do that, because I need to understand. That's my tendency, okay? I need to understand things. That's me. I don't know about you. I need to understand things. Some people.
no, I do.
Okay, so it's not because I didn't understand the English. I didn't understand most of the Tibetan, but I did understand the English very well. But it wasn't the same wording. I remember when I was doing the research about why to choose this word or to this word, it was more I dived deeper into the understanding of the sadhana. Why do you choose this word or this word? For me, in Hebrew, okay? So that's part of the language. Now let's talk about the tanka, or the visual deities visual, and what the octomerons, or all the ritual aspect that they hold. It's not about the knife, and it's not about the kapala, the cup, and it's not about the I don't know, the skull cups. It's not about that. Each one of those has two levels. The first level is that it's representation of something, and you need to learn that from a qualified teacher. It's not, I mean, when at some point, for example, I don't know when was that on my path, I think, I don't know, maybe after 10 years of practicing, I wrote a commentary on the 32 let's say 32 octomerons that actually are characteristics of Vajrayogini. My Vajrayogini is my main practice, okay? So I wrote a commentary about that. But while writing the commentary, I didn't mean to distribute it to people. I wrote it for myself. It's a self-commentary, okay? And what I did, eventually I gave it to my friends, of course, but what I did is trying to understand what is there. So this is the level, again, of me needing to understand things, okay? And to learn that. It's like an actor who is going on the stage. He receives the scripture and how he's going on the stage. And there is a reason why he wears this, I don't know, maybe he or she is acting as an old man or woman. And there is a reason why they put a pillow on their back, because they're having some kind of a hatchback. There is a reason why this character has this specific characteristic. So all of a sudden, try to imagine to yourself that you're going on the stage and you have a pillow on your back, and you're going, tilted down, it affects your energy right away, right? Remember, we're working on the energy body with Tantra, not on the conceptual body. So those are affecting our body right away. Those octomerons that will provide actually the characteristic. We'll talk about it later on. But there is another level, which is when we see something, it also works on our unconsciousness. Okay, and there is a reason why those deities, for example, they wear earrings. Okay, there is a reason for that. Why those earrings are there. And those earrings in this deity represent something, and in other deity represent something else. And you need to learn that. And that's why at the beginning, the conceptual mind is so important. We want to learn. But then when it's there, when you walk on the stage with a pillow in your back and you're tilted down and you feel the heaviness of this life on your back, you don't need to see that and you don't need to understand that. It's there embodied in your body. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So those are two different levels. It's on the unconsciousness level and on the conceptual level to understand. Now, each one of those, by the way, just to give you a hint for that, representing a characteristic. And I want to know how to develop this characteristic in my life. So this commentary of those 32 characteristics that I did was my life plan. What do I want? What do I want to develop in order to be enlightened, as was presented to me in Vajrayana? It's a work plan. That's why I liked it so much, because it was so beautiful when I understood those. For example, the earrings, I'll just give you an example. The earrings, for example, is the development of the patients in the 6 paramitas, okay? Okay, I have to work on those in this patient. Okay, I'll work on that. So now it's a work plan for me. How do I develop my patient? It's not how I put my earrings. Do you understand? The earring is just a representation. Okay? So I hope I understand. But yeah, we'll work on that in the future.
Thank you.
Taylor, you're now, and you're the last one because we have to wrap up in a few minutes. You're still muted. I can't hear you.
So sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. What is the proper way if one wanted to request to speak with you in private?
Well, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but I'm not open to speak privately, okay? But you can register for Lama Lina's Zoom Tantra. And even though it's not private, it's more private than here because we are less people there, but everyone can ask their question. And as you could see, I can refer to your question. And don't worry, the tantric Zoom class of Lama Lina that she asked me to hold while she's traveling, okay, is not being put up. And even though you need to know, guys, you're here, so you need to know that although we see each other and I see you, nobody else, I mean, and it's going to be put it on the YouTube, you're not seen. Okay, I mean, if I call you Tyler, well, there are, I don't know, maybe 100 Tylers in the world. Okay, so nobody knows that it's you and you're not, your name, your picture is not there, okay? So you can ask me whatever you want. It's private, although it's not private, you know, in the world. Feel free to ask me any question you want because feel it like it's private, okay? That's, by the way, that's what drawn me at the first place to Lama Lina, because I feel that she is giving each one of us the best attention she can, and she's able to give us such a great attention when we ask her a personal question and she sees us and she gives us the personal answer to our personal questions, okay? So either you want to do it in here, okay, in our future classes when I'll open up the questions, or you can do it in Tantric, in the Zoom Tantra. Just register for that, for the Tantric Zoom class, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we are concluded. Yes, the Zoom Tantra. Lela, can you put please the link for the registration form for the Zoom Tantra
Yeah, I will put
class?
it.
Yes, please. So let's conclude. We had some great news last night that we really hope that will be manifest in our world, that there might be a peace agreement in the Middle East and also maybe in Europe as well, and in other countries. And it will bring cease to the suffering of so many people. So if we can dedicate this class and our practice to this, please stay with me with that. Devadi Nyurdudu Chechi Salam Gopasho. May all beings be happy wherever they are. So I'll see you next week. Bring questions. Bye, guys.